one of the I'm one of the PTN facilitators from Cotsen Unified School District. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Joshua Helpern, and he's also a colleague of mine in Cotsen Unified School District. And today he's going to be presenting on how can you use estimation to excite students about numbers. A few business items. If you have questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat. I will man those for him. And at the end of the presentation, I will be sharing his resources in the chat as well. All right, Joshua, it's all yours.
Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So thank you for joining me today. And we're going to talk about estimation and why we can be using this with our students. So, and again, I'm Joshua Helpern. I'm a fourth grade teacher in Cotsen Unified. And so why should we use estimation with our students? It's a great way to get them working on number sense. Well, what exactly is number sense? I love Andrew Stadell's definition. He says number sense is thinking flexibly about numbers with purpose and accuracy. And this is really what we want our students to be able to do. We want them to be thinking, and estimation is a great way to get that going. So why else should we use estimation? Well, again, that flexible thinking about numbers, the problem solving idea, sharing ideas with their classmates. That's why it's a great number talk. We can get them talking about what they see, and justifying, defending, thinking. Why is your answer better than someone else's? Why did you come up with that answer? How can you explain that? Can you convince me that your answer is the correct one? But my favorite thing about the estimation skills, and I'm going to work on two different sites, two different ways you can do this with your students, is it kind of gamifies learning for them. They see it as a game and they get all excited. They're like, oh yeah, estimation, I love this. Let's go. So the first one that I'm going to do with you guys is Andrew Stadell's website called Estimation 180. And so what our goal is, this is what his site looks like. And there's two things that you want to look at on his site. The first thing at the top right is resources, is a great page that he has with some videos where he introduces the site to you, tells you things you can do with the site. He also has some downloadable information there as well that you can use. And he just asks you to give your email to get access to those. And then the other thing that you're going to use is the days section. And the days, he's got hundreds of days in there, each with a different estimation activity. So I'm going to go through some of those with you so you could see what this would look like with your students. So what we'll do is, our goal is to have students make a strategic choice of a number within a reasonable range. And so what that means is when they're estimating, we don't want them just guessing randomly. We want them actually to be thinking about this and problem solving and coming up with a reasonable answer. So one of the tools we have to do that, and what Andrew likes using, is a number line. And so on our number line, you can just have them draw this in their notebook. You can have one ready for them. But on the number line, we're looking for too low, too high, and then we'll make our estimate somewhere in there. So when I'm doing these estimations with my students, I always start on the too low side. And I ask them, given the image that you're trying to figure out, what do you think is an estimate that would be too low? And we can always go 0 or 1 on the too low side, but we want to narrow it down. We want to make our range as small as possible and make the best estimate possible. So that's some of the problem solving and the thinking that comes in. And so we have a discussion about, well, what number do you think is too low? We can go bigger than 0 or 1 though, because we're trying to narrow down our estimate. So what's a number that's too low without eliminating your estimate? Where would you go on the low side? And so you have your students come up with this, you can have a discussion, and you might pick out what you think is a good number to use as your too low. Then I go to the high side with them. What's a number that's too high? And the reason I start with the too low is I find it's a better way to go, because we can have that discussion about 0 or 1 is probably too low. How can we go up from there? On the high side, the numbers could be anything. They could start with 1,000,000's too big. They could say 1,000's too big. So the numbers could be really large there. To narrow down the range, we got to look at, well, what are we estimating and what do we think is a good estimate that's too high, that's going to be above your estimate, but really narrows down our range and makes it, hey, my estimate's going to be easier to find if my range is smaller. So too high, too low. The last thing I do with my students is then I say, well, a number line is also a really good tool. We've picked out our estimate that we think is too low. We've picked out what we think is too high. So what's a reasonable estimate now? It's got to fall somewhere in that range. And I also asked them, where would you put it on the number line? Would you pick a number that's right in the middle between your high and your low? Do you think your estimate's going to be closer to your lower side? Do you think your estimate's going to be closer to your higher side? Where would you put it on this number line? This is a great tool to use with the estimation. So we're going to go through one together. And what I'm going to have you guys do is when I put up the image, we're going to start with the too low. And so in the chat, I just want you to throw out numbers for me. What do you think would be a number that's too low for this? And if you want to, you can also share your thinking of why did you choose that number? Why do you think that's a good starting point on an estimation that's too low? Okay, so this is day 206. How many cheese balls will fit in the tray? So what do you think is an estimate that's too low? Where would be the bottom end of our range? $100, okay. 50, great. Any other thoughts? 80, fantastic. 200, okay. And so what I would have is I would have a discussion with my students about the numbers they're choosing. If any of them seem out of the range or too high, we might talk about that. But I never discourage them. I never say, no, that's bad, that's wrong. It's all about what works for our low end. And we're seeing that most of them are falling in that range of our tens and our hundreds. So that seems like a good place to start for this. So I might pick one and say, okay, I think, yeah, 100's a good place for us to start. Let's use that as our low end on our number line. Now we're going to do the same thing on the high end. What do you think is a good estimate for too high? How many cheese balls would be too many for this tray? And again, go ahead and put your answers into the chat. Fantastic. 400, 1,000, 500, 800. Okay, so this time we're seeing a lot of those numbers that we're picking on the too high end are falling in the upper hundreds or in the thousands. So that's great too. That gives us the high end for where would this be? Now, I might have students saying 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, and that's fine too. That's on the high end also. And I'm just discussing the numbers with them, asking them where they got that from, why they think that's too many, and then we narrow it down. So if we picked our range, on the too low, we've got 100 now. On the too high, I might say, okay, let's use 1,000 as too high. So I've got the bottom and the top. Now I'm going to say, okay, so there's our range. Our range has been narrowed down. It's a good size range. What would you choose as your estimate? Do you think your actual estimate is going to be right in the middle of those two numbers? Do you think it'll be closer to the 100 side, the low end? Do you think it'll be closer to the 1,000 side, the high end? What do you think is a good estimate? How many cheese balls do you think are going to fit on this tray? Go ahead and throw your estimate in. 250, closer to the low end side. Okay, great. So make a guess closer to the low end side. What do you think would be a good number above 100? 300, great. 350. Okay, so I'm seeing most of us seem to think that it's going to be in this range. It's going to be somewhere on the lower end. We're in the 200 to the 300s. Those are all great guesses. And so the last thing I would do then is the reveal. And on Andrew's website, he's got two. He usually has two reveal buttons. One's a video reveal, and that's the one that I use when I'm doing this live with my students. He also has a second button that's just a picture reveal, and that's what I'm going to do with you guys. The video reveals are usually a speeded up version of him counting the things. And so for this tray, it turns out we can fit 286 cheese balls. So you guys were all really close to that estimate. We're doing a good job with your range and where you were picking. Awesome. And then the really cool thing he does on his site too is he'll stick with an estimation like this for a couple days. So he's going to stick with cheese balls, but we're going to do some different things with it. So on day 207, he'll bring up this one. So we remember the tray. We can remind ourselves, yeah, there were 200 86 cheese balls in the tray. Today, we want to see how many cheese balls would fit on this plate. So we've got a reference to go with that. And when I do this, I ask my students, okay, well, do you think today's estimate is going to be higher or lower than what we did yesterday? And they look at the plate and they go, oh, well, the plate's smaller than the tray, so it's going to be a lower number. And then we go through the process again. So it's nice that he has these things and they have reference points, and he recommends that they might want to keep a record of their estimations, what day it is and what their high and low was and what their estimate was for day 206, so that they can then do that again for day 207, day 208, and they can keep using those reference points as you go through them. Or you can just give them a reminder of, hey, here's what we did yesterday. That might be a helpful starting point for us. So the reveal on the plate, yep, this one's smaller, 156 will fit on the plate. And then the next day he has an even smaller plate. Okay, so this one's going to be smaller. And this one holds 91 cheese balls. And then he goes to the tub of cheese balls. Oh, now we're definitely going much bigger. So how many would be in there? And this one holds 910 cheese balls. So he kind of sequences them through the days so you can stay on the same one, but use those to help them with their estimating skills. And then he's got a lot of really different images that he uses too. Not only are they counting things, but sometimes they're measurement things. How long is something? How tall is something? He's got ones where you're filling a container, how much would be in there. So he's got all kinds of different estimations that you can use with your students, depending on where they're at and what you want to work on with them. So the second estimation activity I like doing with my students is called Esther Mysteries. And this one was created by Steve Wyborny. And it's similar to the Estimation 180, but this is one where they're going to be revising their estimates. And so Andrew Stadell had them using that number line as a tool for guessing. What Steve Wyborny recommends using for his is a hundreds chart. So you start out with a hundreds chart, and you can either have one up that you're going to use together as a class, or you can have an individual one for each of your students that they're using. And so his estimates are somewhere between 1 and 100 that they're going to be doing. And so I'm going to take you through an Esther mystery so you can see how this works. And so the one we're going to be doing is called So Many Bananas. And so he brings up the initial image, and in his older ones, you'll just have the image and the Esther mysteries. In his newer ones, he's got an interactive to go with it. So what you would do here is just like the Estimation 180, you would put up the image and say, okay, guys, what do you think is a good estimate for the number of fruits that are in this container? And the other thing he will often do with his things that my students start noticing is, you'll notice there's a little die down there that has a 6 on it. And usually when he does that, that has something to do with the estimation. So they also think about that a little bit as they're making their initial estimate. So go ahead and make a guess for your initial estimate. How many fruits do you think are in this container? So we got 60, that makes sense because there's a 6. So that has something to do with it. 75, 86, great, awesome guesses. And again, I could have a discussion here with my students like we did with the 180. What's too low? What's too high? How did you come up with your guess? Now, the thing with Esther Mysteries, so how many objects are in there? He explains how we're supposed to do it. So clues are going to appear. And as the clues appear, you're going to revise your estimate. Your original estimate may still hold, but if it doesn't, then you're just going to make a new guess, a new estimate as we go. And if your estimate gets eliminated, that's fine. It just means you make a new estimate. Is your new estimate close to your original estimate, or are you going to choose something completely different? And in his newer ones, like I said, he's got the interactive built in. So he puts the 100 chart up here that you can use, or you can just keep it as the picture and have them doing their own 100 charts. So clue number 1 on this, the answer is a multiple. Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. The answer is a multiple of the number of bananas that are in there. Okay, so we got to count the bananas, and I count the bananas and I see it's 6. So the cool thing about the Esther Mysteries is not only are they doing this fun gamified math activity and using their thinking problem solving skills, but he brings a lot of academic language in there. So we might have to have a discussion about what does multiples mean? And we're using repeated addition skills or counting on or multiplication. In this case, we're doing multiples of 6. So they could cross out anything that's not a multiple of 6 on their hundreds chart and see what's left. And with the interactive one, okay, this is what's left. These are my multiples of 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. So I've narrowed down my choices And now I'm going to do it again. If your guess got eliminated, that's fine. Make a new estimate. You could pick one that's close to your guess if you still think your estimate was a good starting point, or you could pick something completely different. And then we go to our next clue. So clue number 2, the answer is not a multiple of 9. Okay, so we already did multiples of 6, but now I have to think of multiples of 9. And so I'm going to eliminate my multiples of 9. Those are gone. This is what's left. I go to clue number 3, and I'm going quicker than I would do this with my students just to show you guys, but I would spend time on this and let them do the math to eliminate these things to get closer to their estimate. Count the bananas again. The answer does not include this number, so we got to eliminate anything that's got a 6 in it. Those are gone. Clue number 4, the answer does not have a 2 or 3 digit. Okay, so you could have a discussion about digits, place value, things like that. So I'm eliminating 12, 24, 42, 30. Those are all gone. I got 3 left. Okay. And my last clue is double the number 42 and eliminate that number. So again, more academic language. What does it mean to double something and bring that in? So doubling 42, I have to eliminate 84. And the thing is, I'm gonna go back. Oh, I gotta go backwards. Even though I got to clue number 5, there's still 2 answers left there. And he does that a lot with his Esther Mysteries, is he doesn't give you the final answer after clue 5. He still wants you to think, well, which one of these do you think is the better estimate? So we're down to, it could be either 48 or 78. Which one do you think it is? And then his final piece is, okay, we've seen all the clues. You wrote down what you think it is. Let's do the reveal. And it turns out there were 78 objects in here. So this is another fun way to do gamifying math estimation with your students and having fun with it. And so that's it. Those are the 2 resources, are the Estimation 180 website and the Steve Wyborny Esther Mysteries. And I have a little time left, so if you guys have any questions, anything you want to ask me, please feel free.
I just put the resource in the chat. Josh, I have a question.
Are those free?
Yes, both websites are free. On the Steve Wyborny, it's a blog, so you just have to find the Esther Mysteries and click on it, and then you can download his presentations. On Estimation 180, the Andrew Stadell one, all of the days you can bring up the images and the reveals for free. If you want his resources, the downloadables that he has, you just have to give him your email to get those.
Someone wanted to know if this is daily or just a few times a week.
You can do it as often as you want. If you wanted to do it daily, you could, because he's got, like I said, on the Estimation 180, he's got over 100 of them. And the Steve Wyborny, he's got over 100 of them. So you could do a different one every single day if you wanted to. You can make it a once or twice a week. The idea is it's a really good number talk to have with your students to get them using their number sense and their thinking skills and their problem solving. And people ask me how long I spend on this too. And it can be anywhere from as quick as just 5 minutes to up to 15, 20 minutes, depending on what kind of discussion you're having, how difficult it is. That's just up to you. But I usually shoot for around 10 minutes with these is what I usually try and do.
Thank you, Joshua, for these resources. A quick question: do you do like estimating like activities like that are live in your classroom, where you put like an estimation jar? Like, I know that when I was a young student, one of my teachers did that.
You absolutely can do that. That would be another step, or a next step is, these ones are great resources, but once you've done a couple of these with your class, you can start making your own and have that in your class with them. Or you can even have the students start making their own, and they could either bring it in or they can take a picture of it, and you could use that to do as well. So you could go either way with those.
That's a great idea. I like that about students making their own. Yeah, thank you so much, Joshua.
Absolutely.
We have a whopping 1 minute. Any more questions? So much
time. Fascinating. This is fascinating. I teach 2nd grade, but this is very fascinating.
And that's the thing. These can be used at any age level. And Steve Wyborny has given a lot of his, if you read some of his blog posts and stuff, he's talked about which ones would be better for K1, 2 versus there are some that are harder that are better for upper grades. He definitely differentiates that way. With the Andrew Stadell ones on the estimation 180, you just kind of have to go through yourself and decide which ones of these would work with the age group you're working with.
Awesome. Thank you.